Thank you so much, and good morning.
Good morning.
That was pretty good, pretty good. I do want to give a huge thank you to everyone that is here in person and everyone that's watching online. It actually means a lot to us that people come to these conferences and are so engaged with everything that we're doing. I want to start off with a little bit of a story about an event that we ran a few years ago from the Angular team. What felt a little bit like a normal Angular meetup that we run in Mountain View that was really co-located next to the team started to feel a little bit different. We had the same sort of normal food, we were catering the event, we had the same sort of attendees coming, speakers presenting about what's going on in Angular, but this one was a little bit different because as we started setting up, we had to do things a little bit differently. And Igor, you're going to have to unlock your laptop if that's all right. So, much like the beginning of this keynote, that event was a little bit different.
Technology. Okay.
If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Thank you so much, Igor.
Sure.
Igor, round of applause for Igor. All right, so as I was saying, that event was a little bit different, because as we were doing this setup, we actually brought in a few props. And so this was us bringing in giant balloons into that event, because it wasn't just a normal meetup, it was actually the release of 2.0.0, which I know was a big release for a lot of people, because there was a lot of anticipation for what was coming. People wanted to really understand what was going to be the final version of that API. And so we brought in balloons, we had a big celebration, and that was September 14th of 2016. And so we are just about at the 3-year anniversary of that release of Angular. And so I think it's a really good time to reflect back on the 5 years of AngularConnect, the 3 years that Angular has been final and stable, and really think about the successes that we've all had, both on the Angular team and within the community, as well as think a little bit about the promises that we made around helping people, helping developers with their productivity, helping them with innovation, and giving them stability and APIs and commitments around release schedule that has really been effective in helping everyone stay up to date and understand what's going on in Angular. Over the next day or so, you're going to hear a lot about the Angular team and the things that we're working on, the things that we're excited about. But as always, I really do think it's really insightful to think about the values that the team has. But I don't want to just say these things. I want to actually give a couple examples from the team of things that we've cared about and ways that we've tried to embody and reflect these values. When it comes to applications that users love to use, we do a lot of surveying to figure out what developers care about, what users care about, and there's sometimes actually a mismatch between those things. We've talked a lot in the past about how a lot of Angular applications are behind the firewall in captive users where users don't have a ton of choice, and that for some developers, bundle size doesn't matter very much. But we feel like we always need to care about the user. We feel like they are essential to our workflow. And so as we've been considering features, even going back to the days when we were in conference rooms and on calls talking about features like differential loading, where we could change the way that we do some of our bundling in order to give users a better experience by giving them more performance, we really wanted to take that to heart and embody those things and build those features, even though not every developer was out there asking for it. Because at the end of the day, we think that if users can be successful, our developers are going to be successful. Another example of where we want to have applications that developers love to build is really focusing on our ecosystem efforts around ng-add and ng-update. We've talked about this a lot in the past, and we're going to keep talking about it because we really do see it as a big opportunity to act as a multiplier for everything you do. When you create ng-add and ng-update schematics, or when you build a builder, as one of the new capabilities that we've released recently, it really does not only improve your life as an engineer, but improve the collaboration across teams, because most of us are not building software in a vacuum, right? At some point, there's going to be other engineers working on the same thing that we are. And so having that sort of collaboration, making it easy not just for myself, but for all of those around me is really, really critical. We also care deeply about a community where everyone feels welcome. One of the things that we do before actually going to a conference like AngularConnect is we ask them, how are you going to make the conference welcoming? How are you going to make sure that everyone feels included? How are you going to help us engage and be a part of the community, help the community engage with us? And so what I want to do is I want to actually tell a few stories about what's been happening in the community recently. One of the things that we announced on Twitter recently is actually the number of events happening across the globe is exploding. And so we posted the number 7 new events in 2019. And this was actually really funny because all of the responses that we got to that post on Twitter were like, hey, me too. I launched a conference. I launched an event. I launched a meetup. And this is so fantastic to see that everyone is so passionate about being engaged, that technology is not just about lines of code. It's about the people. It's about the developers. It's about the communities that we build around these things. And that's what ends up truly making us effective. And so a huge thank you to everyone that attends a meetup, that starts a meetup, even if you just talk with your friends about technology, because sharing is how we all get better together. Another organization that I'm a personally huge fan of is NG Girls. They work very, very hard to train new engineers using technologies like Angular, RxJS, and so on. They've actually had a huge amount of success over the last year or so. If you look back, they've run 25 different workshops. If you look at the number of attendees, I was actually astonished by this number. They've had over 700 participants coming through. They had over 250 mentors. And they actually have 9 more events planned in the upcoming future. And so if you're interested in supporting events like these, definitely take a look at the NG Girls website and think about becoming a volunteer. Think about pulling other people that you know that feel like Angular or JavaScript or web development could be an opportunity for them, and think about encouraging them to attend one of these workshops, because we do really see this as transformative for a lot of the people that attend. One of the things that we've done a pretty good job of in the past that we haven't done for a couple years is we actually wanted to hear from some of the people that are using Angular on a day-to-day basis. And so what I want to do right now is I want to take a brief moment and actually reflect on 4 different stories of teams that are out there integrating with and building on top of Angular, and really understand the things that they've figured out and how it works best for them. And so first up, I want to invite a couple of my friends from Deutsche Bank, René and Florian, who've been working on something they call business components and dynamic processes.
Hello, folks. My name is René Christ. I created DB Core, our Angular-based front-end platform at Deutsche Bank, along with my fantastic team. Our vision is to help people do better work by using better tools. And Angular is our noise-canceling tool to focus on the cool stuff in web development. My department roughly deals with 60 single-page web applications, and we have frequent changes. Small changes like text changes, as well as more complex changes in order to comply with regulations, and also building new websites from scratch. In order to cope with such an amount of sites and business requirements in a fun and efficient way, we came up with the concept of business components to reuse code across domains. Our goal is to change a component once and let the changes explore to all our applications. So, we have basic components such as a button and input fields, and we combine them so that they fit a single business process, hence the name business component. This business component, for example, deals with customers' personal data, and it is connected with the corresponding backend service. And every time we use this component, we use the same backend service. The final result is a combination of business components. And however, you don't have to build these 60 sites by hand. And now I hand over to the really cool part to Florian.
Thank you, René. So, okay, as you heard, we have nearly 60 applications. So instead of coding every application again and again, we zoomed a little bit out and we concentrate on the structure of our application. That led us to an abstraction model. And with this model, we were enabled to build a no-code editor for our processes that is based on top of our business components. With this editor, our business people are able to create applications via drag and drop and to set the focus for them for the customer information, the legal stuff, and the sales funnel. To complete the cycle, we also built in a live preview and a one-click deployment with audit-proof versioning. From the technical perspective, the whole editor is built on Angular and Node.js and produces Angular applications. We use the Angular CLI for the builds. We use schematics for creating our final code for the application, and we use the workspace concept for handling multiple themes. With the great support from the Angular team, with their innovations and on GitHub, it enables us to optimize our workflow within Deutsche Bank and to bring crazy ideas to life. So thank you for this great work to the Angular team, and so I hand back to Steven.
Thank you, London.
So that was Deutsche Bank talking a little bit about this idea of business components. And this is actually a pattern that I've seen growing a lot over the last year or two, where teams are wrapping not just UX patterns, but also business processes and business rules into shareable components across large companies. And I think that's really exciting. I think that we can all think about that model and use that model to evaluate some of the ways that we're expanding our component libraries. Next up, I want to invite Jochen Super from Allianz, who's going to tell us a little bit about the way that they're using schematics to help Allianz move forward cohesively as a single company using same sorts of technologies, and some of the ways that they're going beyond theming. Jochen.
Hey, everybody. Wrong direction. So about 2 years ago, we started building a UI library for the branding of Allianz. We built that on the Angular Material CDK. And today we have many teams in Allianz running on Angular and many teams running our UI library. And I just want to share 2 things that we've done over the last couple of months. One is automating updates for major updates and also supporting different use cases that we have within Allianz. The first thing is we started building schematics. We had a major update from 7 to 8 in our library, and we said, let's build schematics to not kind of have breaking changes affect our users. So we built ng-update for our library, and I just wanted to share kind of the 3 main takeaways that we had with this. The first is there is a learning curve, especially with ng-update, because you're going to be looking at ASTs, and you have to understand that. So for us, that was a learning curve. Good thing is it works. The second thing is even though we documented it and we shipped it, many teams still manually update it. So there is community work. You can't expect to kind of release this and then every team will use it. You have to talk to the people and educate them to do it. So that's, at least for us, something we need to do more. And the last thing was we shipped a breaking change, and what we got back from people using it was a smile. They said, this was so cool, we really liked it. So that's going to kind of make us do this more and more often. So for us, it was really nice. It was a little bit of work, although, to kind of get this up and running. The second thing we have is we have 2 different use cases we serve in Allianz. We have kind of a branding for customers. They visit our websites kind of once or for a couple of minutes. So for them, small animations like a floating label you see, it's completely fine. We have another use case where we have employees. They sit in front of an application for many hours a day. They don't want any kind of floating or changes of layout. They want it more rigid. That's what you see on the right-hand side. Now, to get from one to the other, there's some markup involved. So you see it's not only theming, you have to change kind of the markup of the component when you use it. In the end, what happened there was we had a lot of conventions. So if people would build internal applications, they basically had to follow a lot of conventions and different components. We documented them. We gave an overview. So we thought it's working fine, but we realized actually people don't read documentation all day, so they don't know those conventions by heart. So we thought, can we do better than just documenting conventions? And now we do so. So what we came up with, we use injection tokens, and they have presets which are actually our conventions in code. And now we package and ship them with our library. So any team that builds applications for internal users, they drop this module in their application, and then the form field looks like it's supposed to look for internal applications instead of having a floating label. Now you can overwrite this, of course, to still have the flexibility. What is really great for us is if the conventions change, we ship another package with the changed conventions, and it's up and running and working. So this is really nice also for us, and I hope also for the teams. Basically, the bottom line is what we were working on the last months very heavily on is moving a lot of things that were manual before or conventions before into code. So one thing, of course, is the schematics, that manual updates for people using the library now become an ng-update command. We also use ng-add to set up the project. We want to use more ng-generate. And we also managed to move a lot of the conventions into injection tokens so that people can just drop them in and use them, and they don't have to worry about them, and we can also kind of continuously update them. And those are just the two things that I wanted to share with you, and also I want to thank Stephen and the Angular team for creating this ecosystem that we can kind of build on top of. Thank you.
All right, now that we've heard from two companies using Angular at scale, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about some of the companies that are participating in the ecosystem and really trying to enrich it. So we've got two examples here, and the first is actually NativeScript. And what we did actually last week was very, very special. We ran a special event, and I'm actually going to invite Santa Mira to the stage to tell us a little bit more about that event.
Thank you, everyone. Last week, we had the first ever hackathon called Hack for Good. It was brought to you by the Angular, the NativeScript teams. The idea was to have an online hackathon where everyone can register and submit ideas for non-governmental organizations. You had the opportunity to build mobile applications with NativeScript and Angular and optimally make the world a better place. For the first edition, we had over 100 registered people to participate, and in the end, we had more than 10 submissions. We also had some pretty cool prizes that I'm going to announce today. In the innovation category, the winner is Team Tech for Good PH with their application Bionic Hand Maps. The application allows you to submit areas and points in the map which need to get better, and also submit locations where you can do recycling. The winner in category design is Team William and their application Tutor. The utility winner is the Team TNS with their application for the Ronald McDonald House Charities. And now getting to the big prizes. The second prize winner is Team Bessia with their project called Blogging. This is actually quite interesting. If you're not familiar with blogging, it is a concept that combines jogging with picking up litter, so definitely check this out. And the big prize winner is Alex Embling with his project about Plastic Oceans UK. So it is a kind of a local application. The app allows you to learn more about plastic pollution and how we can prevent it. Also, you have the opportunity to find local recycling centers near you, your home, or your office. And you can also track your recycled plastic. If you want to donate to Plastic Oceans UK, you can also do this from the application. And if you want to learn more about the hackathon, any upcoming editions, maybe next year, go to the ng-ns.org website and learn more. Thank you.
I'm really glad we were able to partner with the NativeScript team and Progress to put this hackathon on. I think it's really impactful whenever we can combine this idea of building technology, learning new skills that can be applicable day to day, but also trying to support those around us, right? The idea of identifying some non-government organizations that need some technology and combining that with learning new things is a very, very powerful combination. So I think this first event was very successful. And if you're interested in participating in a future event like this, definitely reach out to us, reach out to the NativeScript team, because we're thinking about next year and figuring out what we should do there. So next up, I want to invite to the stage Mike, who is representing Ionic. This is the last community highlight that we want to do. But one of the things that we've done for a long time is we've partnered with the Ionic team to really share as much technology as we can. A lot of the earlier versions of Ionic were based on AngularJS. They have a really great component suite for Angular. And we found that we can always learn from each other, right? There's always opportunities for us to share technology, not build the same thing twice. And Mike's going to tell us a little bit about that and some of the cool new things they're working on.
Cool. All right. Yeah, so we have been around building with Angular for many years now. And in the past, we have traditionally built our own tools and routers and different best practices and kind of followed our own path. And for a while, that worked well until we realized there was a big investment in doing this. And around the time we started thinking about our 4.0, we really want to go ahead and say, let's forget all about that and just kind of opt into what does Angular give us. So that meant going away from our own build tools to using things like the Angular CLI, opting to get rid of our own router and go all in on the Angular router and start to follow some of the Angular best practices. But we took it a step further where we started saying, okay, this is a really good base. What can we do that gets more in line of what an Ionic app should be doing? So we started to extend the pieces that come with Angular. That means creating our own router component that can reuse a lot of the router information provided by the Angular router, but provide animations, gesture support. Started creating our own builders on top of the CLI, so that way we can provide more contextual information to the native platforms when you go to build for iOS or Android. And then also extending the Angular schematics, so that way you can get the default, so that way we can override the default component schematics and provide more Ionic-specific markup. We took a lot of these lessons that we learned with our Ionic Angular release and started to apply them to different projects within Ionic as an organization. One of the first ones that we've been doing is Capacitor, where we're starting to create a suite of schematics and builders to make integrating Capacitor into an Angular project much easier, and also to deploy to these native platforms in a very Angular-friendly way. Another one that we've been working on more recently is an app builder called Studio. This is a really interesting project because it has deep understanding of what your Angular project is doing and can provide more contextual information based on how the app is being built. So if you're inside a page or inside of a component with a route, it can show you that route information right away and give you all the details that you would expect. All this made possible because of the tools that Angular provides. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think this is another really great example of whenever we can not rebuild the same thing over and over and over in technology, we can collaborate instead of competing. This is a really successful story for everybody. About once a week, someone will come up to me and say, hey, Steven, I saw that talk you gave about Angular for designers. What's happening with that? Has anyone ever had that thought maybe? Because a couple years ago, we actually made a commitment. It was a very, very loose commitment and a very, very long-term commitment that said, we care about people that build prototypes, we care about designers that are using Angular, and we care about this use case. And so we talked about a product that is still under development at Google that I do not have an update about, but one of the things that we're really happy to see is that the community is stepping up to fill some of those needs in the designer space. And so one of the tools that's actually launched this month is from a team called Acqueo called UI Bakery. And so this is a paid tool that I just wanted to put on people's radar that fills some of those needs that we have where we really want to smooth the integration between designers and developers and prototypers. And we feel like these things can be better when you're prototyping and building proof of concepts and research projects with real components. And this is one of those manifestations. And so UI Bakery, they have an interface where you can apply a lot of the standard margins, paddings, add components, create custom components, all those sorts of things. And so if you are working with a team that needs to do prototyping, and you want something that's a little bit more drag and drop style as opposed to writing a bunch of HTML and installing CLI tools, this is definitely a tool to check out. The last company that I want to talk about that actually uses Angular a fair amount, you may have heard of it, it's called Google. Last year at AngularConnect, we talked about there being over 600 different projects that are using Angular. And at the time, I thought that was a lot. I was like, wow, 600 different projects? I mean, I know there's a lot of projects going on at Google, but I didn't know that there were that many. And it turns out that I dramatically underestimated the growth and the success of Angular even in Google. So as of now, as of this month, we're at over 1,500 projects within Google. And the weirdest manifestation of this is that at Google, one of the perks is that you get massages every year. You can buy massages and things like that. And I was logging in to book an appointment, and they switched. They're like, hey, we're deprecating our old app, and we're shipping a new application for booking those appointments. And it was built in Angular. And this just happens all of the time at Google, and it's kind of fun to watch when you're on the Angular team, because we never had to talk to that team. They just said, hey, there's a great technology. We want to go use it. We're going to adopt it. And so Angular is doing very, very well at Google, and we're really excited to continue to support that. One of the other pieces of community that I want to talk about is actually our GDE program. you'll see GDEs all over AngularConnect. You'll see them all over the globe at all sorts of different conferences. And this is a program that continues to grow and continues to be very, very impactful for us in terms of helping us share Angular with the world, but also in terms of collecting the feedback from the world and reflecting it onto the team so that we can hear from everyone. Because one of our problems on the team, and especially from the DevRel perspective, is that most of the Angular developers in the world are not in this room. Most of the Angular developers in this world are not on Twitter. They're not watching this live stream, unfortunately. But by having these connections and making a community and understanding that people are welcome, that is the way that we help those people use Angular better and become part of that community. And so I want to thank all of our Angular GDEs for being a part of that. One of the other programs that we've talked about and we introduced over the last year is actually our collaborator program. And our collaborator program was really focused on this idea that, hey, if people are contributing to our GitHub repository, they're actually helping us build Angular in a consistent manner that's really spending a lot of time and energy. We want to do more to support them. And so we launched the collaborator program with a few initial collaborators that we're going to talk about throughout the rest of the conference. But I wanted to just highlight a couple top collaborators, because these two individuals have really gone above and beyond in terms of helping us. So we've got Jiali. Someone said Jiali is here. Are you here? There he is. So a huge thank you to you. So as you don't know, he works a lot on Zone.js. So he actually worked on it a ton before we brought it into the Angular repo, and then we actually brought it into the Angular repo to ensure quality, to ensure all those integration tests were working very, very well, and that all these technologies could move forward in lockstep. And he's been really, really instrumental to that. So a huge thank you to him. And the other top collaborator that we wanted to call out that's really gone above and beyond is Yost, who's been working on the compiler. He's been working on NGCC. He's been working on a lot of the internals that's going to make the Ivy adoption process that everyone in this room goes through much, much easier, much smoother, so that you get the sort of backward compatibility that you expect from Angular. And so both these collaborators, I just huge thank you. We could not continue making Angular without you. So with that, I want to hand it over to Igor, who's going to turn us a little bit from the community and turn us now towards the technology and the things that we're working on and we've been working on in the past.
Thank you, Steven. I just want to say one more time thank you to all the collaborators and contributors, because we are very grateful for all the help we get when building Angular. And I just want to make sure that you understand that we appreciate every contribution that we get, no matter how big or small, or even weird, like this drawing that we were left with after our summer intern, Elisa Wang, finished her internship. Not only she built a lot of cool stuff with Angular, but she left the office decorated with all kinds of cool stuff. And this drawing in particular, I think, reflects and captures some of the quirky nature of Angular. That is really cool. My name is Igor Minar. I'm the tech lead on Angular, and I'm super happy to be able to connect with you over the next 2 days and talk about Angular. In this presentation, I'm going to cover some of the stuff that the team has worked on over the last 6 months, and we're also going to look into the future, see where Angular is heading. As you probably know, if you've been part of the community for a while, Angular is following this 6-month release cycle, where every 6 months we release a new major version. And we do this because we want to make sure that you understand how we are evolving Angular. We want to bring new features to you, but do it in a way that is responsible and predictable. With every release, we not only bring new features, but we also make sure backwards compatibility is part of the release, and the upgrades are super simple. This year, in May, we released version 8, and I'm going to cover some of the features that came out of that release. And currently, we are a few weeks away from the release candidate for version 9 that is scheduled to be coming out later in November. In May, the release that went out was really feature-packed. I cannot cover all the features, so I'm just going to focus on some of my favorites. And I'm going to focus on those that had the biggest impact in user experience and developer experience. There was no feature that is more important than the differential loading that Steven already mentioned. The reason for that is that it impacted both the user experience and the developer experience. If you don't know much about differential loading, let me give you a crash course. Traditionally, when you build an application, you build your application and optimize it for production in a way that creates bundles that work both in modern browsers and legacy browsers. These bundles are composed of polyfills that target primarily the legacy browsers that don't have all of the new APIs, and use the syntax of JavaScript that is older, often more verbose. This assures that the application works across all the browsers. However, it degrades the experience for users of new evergreen browsers. With differential loading, what you can do is you basically build the application twice. You build it once for modern browsers using just a minimal set of polyfills, and you use the modern syntax of JavaScript, which is much more succinct, resulting in smaller bundles. This results in better user experience because the application loads faster, but it also results in better developer experience because as you're developing the application, your refresh cycles is faster, and if you debug the code, you're looking at code that looks much more closer to the code you actually wrote in your IDE. However, to support the legacy browsers, we built the application second time, this time with a full set of polyfills and an older version of JavaScript so that it works. So you get both of the best worlds. The modern browsers get modern version of the application, while the legacy browsers still work. When we rolled out this change on Angular I/O, which is one of our guinea pigs for testing many of the experiments, we found that differential loading saved about 41 kilobytes. This is about 10% of the application. And once we launched this feature to production and people started upgrading to version 8, the reports we got is that overall there were savings in the range of 7 to 20%. And this is awesome because all you had to do was to do ng update and your application is suddenly smaller. The best part of this is that differential loading works with all the servers and all the hosting infrastructure out there. There's no changes required because differential loading works as a build step, and at runtime, we do feature detection to recognize if we're using a modern browser or a legacy browser and load the right version of the application. As I mentioned, one of the things that makes differential loading work is that we build the application twice. Once for modern browsers, once for legacy browsers. This can increase the build times of the application. And over the summer, we improved the differential loading implementation in Angular by changing and optimizing the build pipeline and essentially down-leveling the modern version of the application to the version for legacy browsers, speeding up the builds by up to 48%. And I don't know if you are like me, but I don't like to wait for my computer to just build my application and watch the progress bar. So 45% improvement in production build speed is something that I really welcomed. Another feature that we shipped was related to deployment. We take pride in Angular being a solution that comes with batteries included. This means we support every step of the developer journey. However, until recently, that wasn't applicable to deployment. Over summer, we released an update which, through just 2 commands, allows you to deploy your application to production very easily. You run ng add and install a package for your hosting solution. I'm listing just 4 that we shipped with when we launched. But over the summer, many more were added. So if you search on npm, you might find one for your hosting provider. Once you have the package installed, then you just run ng deploy. And all that happens is that production build of the application starts to be pushed to the hosting provider, and the workflow of the particular provider will walk you through actually getting the application. This makes deployments much simpler and really helps us get the applications to production with just a few steps. Steven mentioned that we also think very deeply about making our community more welcoming. However, when we revisited the user journey of a new developer that uses Angular, and when they run ng-new, we realized that we were not doing such a great job. If you look at the welcome screen that you see once you build the application, it's not very useful, and to be very generous, it's not inspiring. So over the summer, the team worked with our designer, Stephanie, and we overhauled the getting started experience and ng-new experience. When you start a new application, not only the screen looks much better, but it also provides useful information about the commands you can run on the command line to extend and enhance your application. There are many other features that were part of the V8 release. I'm going to list just a few, quickly run through them. We added support for dynamic import This makes Angular more compatible with modern standards, and I'm going to show a demo of that a little bit later. We added a way to customize builds using custom builders, and my teammate Minko is going to show some of that in tomorrow's keynote. We also made it possible to bundle web workers as part of the application. This allows you to offload part of the application into the web worker thread while still being in the comfort and getting the support of the CLI when it comes to bundling, code splitting of the application. Even though it's been 3 years since we released Angular version 2, we're still thinking about the AngularJS developers. Many of them are still migrating their legacy applications to modern stack, and we wanted to support them in a way that is helpful. One of the things we've done is we added $location support to Angular so that if you have a system that has a hybrid approach to upgrading where you're using both AngularJS and Angular, you can use a single unified router for both of them and the both parts of the application work. This makes migration much simpler and allows you to transition to Angular faster. Another one that we spend some time on is improving the IDE support, especially if you're a VS Code user. In the past, you might have seen some latency issues and unreliabilities in the autocompletion. This has been solved over the summer, and the user experience is much better. We also spend a lot of time on docs, especially on getting started, so that new users, as they're coming to Angular, have a better time. If you are following Angular closely, you probably noticed that in May, we also released a preview version of Ivy. Ivy, if you don't know, is a rethink of how Angular works internally with several goals. One of them is making the applications smaller, and we were able to achieve this. I'm going to show you in a little bit. We also wanted to make applications faster, and this has many aspects. One of the ones that we focused on was the compilation speed. Alex Rickaby is going to give a talk right after this keynote about the compiler and how the compiler works. And one of the big achievements that we achieved with Ivy is that we can turn on AOT compilation, ahead-of-time compilation, even in dev modes, because the compiler is fast enough to support this development. This means that you now have consistent experience between the development compilation and the production on compilation, which solves some of the inconsistencies that we've seen in the past. We also made Angular simpler, not only internally, because the internal implementation is simpler, some of the concepts are simpler, but we also reflected that in some of the APIs and some of the workflows. Let me show you an example. One of these features is specifically targeting debugging experience. One of the feedback we got from developers was that debugging AngularJS applications was much simpler because I was able to jump into console and poke around. Well, we added this feature to Angular now. So if you look, I have an application, we have Angular IO application, which has this particular slider. And let's say for whatever reason this is not working properly, what I can do now in console, I can select the element that represents the slider. This is just regular DevTools. But in dev mode, we now have helper functions that allows us to poke around. I can grab a component for this particular element using getComponent and point it at the element. This, sorry about the screen. This allows me to poke around the element and even call functions like this close one. This will update the state of the component, and using some of these helper functions, I can trigger change detection and actually apply the change detection and see the visual results. With this, you have much easier access to Angular. You can debug your applications. Hopefully, you will not need to, because the compilation is getting better at catching errors earlier. But if you do have to, you can jump into console, and the debugging is simpler. One thing that I cannot underestimate, and I'm going to come back to this in a bit, is backwards compatibility. We learned a lot about the importance of backwards compatibility and the pain any kind of breaking changes cause. So a lot of focus with Ivy was making sure that even though we overhaul the entire compiler and the entire runtime, we are as backwards compatible as possible. I mentioned that we achieved some size reductions when it comes to building an application with Ivy. Well, how much are these? We are still in the development phase. We're a few weeks away from RC, but we already see that the small applications are 30% smaller. Medium applications are either on par or slightly bigger. This is something that we're still actively working on. But large applications see the most significant difference, where we see reports of up to 40% improvement in payload size. How did we achieve this? What is so special about Ivy that allows us to get these results? Well, to explain that, it's probably the easiest to look at an example. I'll show you a template, very simple template with a div and hello world, that is compiled using the Ivy compiler, ngTSC, into code that looks something like this, where we have 3 functions, element start, text, and element end. This is the generated code that you will see in the browser once you're debugging your Ivy application. Makes it much easier to debug. But for the purposes of understanding the size implications, we can forget about all of the arguments and just focus on the functions. The important piece of information is that every feature of the Angular runtime is now expressed as a function. We call these functions instructions, and in this particular case, we have the start element and end element expressed as individual functions, and the text in between also expressed as function. As we add more features to our templates, the compiler will start generating more and more functions and adding these functions to the generated code. So in case of interpolation, we have an interpolate function, we have interpolate instructions. If we add attribute binding, we have an instruction for that. If we add a click listener, there is an instruction for that. If you add style binding, there is an instruction for that. And different versions, different sets of bindings have different implications and bring in different instructions. The interesting part is that you only pay for the instructions that you're actively using in your application. The Angular runtime is currently composed out of about over 150 instructions. You will probably not use all of them. And the ones you don't use will just go away as part of the optimization and tree shaking. In addition to this modularization and the ability to shake away parts of the framework that are not being used, the format itself, the generated code, is much more compact and easier to minify. And the combination of these 2 features allows us to get the benefits that I showed you earlier. With Ivy being out in preview, we set a clear goal for version 9. And the goal was to make it possible to enable Ivy for all the applications by default. When we talked about the experience we want for developers once they start upgrading to version 9, we discussed that we essentially want it to be as simple as running one command. We want you to ng update and update both the core of the framework and CLI. And what this does, it not only updates the dependencies, but it also updates the build system, starts using the new compilers, switches over the development mode to use AOT compiler, and additionally, we execute migrations. In the past, we successfully migrated the community over through several breaking changes where APIs were deprecated and we want you to start using new ones. You'll see more of that as we deprecated some of the older APIs in the past. The part of ng update will update your application, bring it onto the latest APIs. But in addition to working with deprecations, we also identified several usage patterns that, even though they were unsupported and invalid, just happened to work in the previous versions of Angular. This was unfortunate because we didn't want to bring these invalid patterns to Ivy, and that's why we created automatic refactorings that we are rolling out as part of ng update that will update the application and get you back on the correct use of the APIs. Lastly, the part of the process is also making all of the libraries compatible with Ivy. Because if you think about it, compiling the application itself is only half of the process. All of the applications depend on libraries, and these libraries need to be made compatible with the new runtime. For this, we built a new compiler we'll call ngCC for compatibility compiler. And what this compiler does, it takes a library. Whether you know it or not, all the libraries were shipped and that are in NPM. They are compatible with what we call Vue engine. That's the previous pipeline, the previous rendering engine of Angular. And on NPM, you'll find JavaScript and metadata files that are compatible with this previous pipeline. What NGCC does, it takes these files and converts them over to Ivy instructions so that the libraries can then participate in the Ivy runtime and be fully compatible. Why we've done this? If you look at NPM, the answer is quite simple. There are hundreds of libraries, even whole component suites on NPM today. On all of them are Vue Engine compatible. And because we take backwards compatibility seriously, we also take forwards compatibility seriously. We didn't want or didn't expect that library authors would just overnight update all of their libraries on NPM over to the Ivy format. And if they, by some magic, did that, it would not be good for the ecosystem, because not all the applications might be ready to update to Ivy, and those would break or become unsupported. Therefore, we decided on a very different approach. We decided with starting with the initial state where both libraries and applications are Vue Engine compatible. We, in version 9, are enabling Ivy for applications only. And we're using NGCC to convert existing libraries over and make them Ivy compatible. Over time, as more applications update to Ivy, the libraries will also update to Ivy. And using NGCC will become not necessary, except for the cases where the application still depends on libraries that have not been updated to Ivy. This creates this very incremental transition that reduces the risk to the ecosystem, to applications, library authors. And to summarize, in version 9, applications will start using Ivy. The applications will get the full benefit. Libraries will also get the benefit of using Ivy because NGCC will turn them on the fly during the build process or installation process into Ivy-compatible libraries. In version 10, we expect the instruction set to stabilize, and at that point, we want library authors to start shipping Ivy code to NPM, making NGCC less important. And we are hoping that by version 11, NGCC will become just a backup solution for some of the obsolete libraries that have not been updated yet. To make sure that this library compatibility really works, we went to the great extent of testing, even creating a continuous integration project in which we verify that existing libraries work. Today, we are testing against 173 most popular libraries, and we're having about 85% success rate with these, improving the compatibility with every big and every release. If you are a library author, please go to this project and add your library. We'll be happy to work with you in case something does not work. However, considering the magnitude of the change, and even though it's an internal change, we don't want to be in a situation where some people cannot update their applications to version 9. And because of this reason, we are adding option to opt out of Ivy in version 9. This will allow you to still jump to version 9, get the benefits other than Ivy from version 9 when it comes to dependencies and improve it, CLI and build process, and still be able to try Ivy once the compatibility improves. If you do have to resort to opt out, please let us know. Please file an issue because we want to work on this and iron all of these issues out so that all of you can get to Ivy as soon as possible. One of the things that I want to leave you with is that Ivy is not just about improving the build time, the payload size, but Ivy is also an enabler. It really allows us to do new things with Angular that were very difficult or impossible to do before. And I'm going to show you two demos that demonstrate this. The first one focuses on styling and style merging. And I want to give credit to Matthias Niemla from our team that built both the demo and also implemented this particular feature. If you are a component author, you probably worked with style binding quite a bit. And you notice that in the past, when you had a component that had internal styles, had host binding, also had bindings to the style property itself, this didn't really work. Or it worked in a very surprising way, where the last binding that changed completely overrode all of the styles of the component. This was something that was inherent to how View Engine worked in the past and change detection worked in the past. With Ivy, we took this opportunity to actually rethink how styling works. And today, once you are using Ivy, the merging happens in a very predictive way, and you can have very sophisticated styles. So in this particular example, I have this model dialog that has some internal styles that are applied to it using host binding. But I also have a directive that sets additional styles on this component. I can enable this, and you see that everything behaves just as we would expect. But I also have styles that are binding directly to the property or individual fine-grained properties. And the cool thing is that no matter how I update all of these bindings, everything works just as we would expect, and the styles are merged. I encourage you, if you're a component author and build reusable components, to go to the repo and play with this to understand why this particular feature is so powerful. And I'm looking forward to all of the possibilities that this will unlock, especially when it comes to sophisticated animations and other things where merging of styles is very crucial. The second demo I want to show you is component lazy loading. Angular had feature lazy loading from version 2, but only at the route level. If you wanted to do any kind of code splitting and lazy loading, you basically had to use routing and do it at the router level. If you were super advanced, you figured out how to do lazy loading at the component level, but it wasn't pretty. It required a lot of boilerplate and some strings and wires and patches to make things work. With Ivy, because the internals of Angular are much simpler, we are able to do things that were not possible before. Let me show you how you can implement lazy loading of components with Ivy. So I have a simple application. What I would like you to do is when I press this rocket, it will load a component and add it to the view. Right now, it's not doing anything, but I already have the click handler set up here. So let's generate a component. Let's call it lazy. Let's make it part of the lazy module. I don't need templates or styles. And let's replace the template with an Angular logo, just so that we have something very visual and very easy to recognize. Now let's jump back to this lazy click handler. And what I would like to do here is get hold of the lazy component by importing it. I'm using the dynamic import. And now I want to attach it to the view. So I already have view container that I'm injecting in this component. I can call create component. And unfortunately for now, I still have to use component factory resolver, which is a way to work with the legacy APIs that are part of the Ivy, part of the View Engine, to resolve the lazy component into a factory. And now when I click the button, I see that, I cannot see on this little screen, that the bundle was loaded and the component was added. Awesome. We really think that lazy loading components in this way will improve the speed of applications and will make it much easier to build more fine-grained applications. As I mentioned, we are still working on polishing these APIs. I'm hoping that by the time we are in the release candidate, all you have to do is just load the component and pass it into the create component methods. This is not working with the current development version yet. Awesome. So we talked a lot about Ivy and some of our aspirations to make Angular smaller, faster, simpler, and backwards compatible. It's been definitely a journey for all of us and the whole team. And I would like to invite Steven to come back on stage and tell you about how you could be part of this journey going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Igor. Wasn't that awesome? Component level lazy loading. It's finally coming. I'm personally really, really excited about this. So I want to turn a little bit now back to everyone in the audience, because at the end of AngularConnect, you're going to go back to your job, you're going to go back to your computer, and you're going to say, what do I do now? And I want to make that really, really simple for you. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go enable IV on your project. So this sounds scary, but it's one command in your terminal, ng update at Angular CLI at next, and at Angular/core at next. If you have some dependency that doesn't think it's IV compatible, you might need to throw a -- force flag on. Don't be scared. Run that command, and two things are going to happen. Either it's going to work perfectly, or something's going to break. If something breaks, we have a really easy path for you. It's called our issue tracker. And we really do believe that now is the time for people to be trying IV, to be giving us issues. We want feedback about IV. We want applications to work, because the more that we can do right now, the better it's going to be when we turn on IV by default for everyone in version 9. And we've been working, like, it's so funny. We talked to Mishka or Kara. We had IV working years ago, but we spent so much time working on backwards compatibility because we care about bringing everyone in this room with us with as little pain, with as little work as possible, because that's how we're all going to move forward as an ecosystem. And if you don't file an issue, Igor's going to feel bad because he spent hours on the emojis, getting those little emojis in the issue template. So definitely do that. So if you are a library author, we want you to keep doing exactly what you're doing, compiling your library with the Vue Engine compiler. If you're not doing your own custom build, you should definitely be using ng Packager. ng Packager is the kind of officially endorsed way of building Angular libraries that follows the Angular package format, and we're always going to make sure that it's doing the right thing. So when we switch the default, when we switch what we should be doing, it's going to automatically update, and you shouldn't have to worry about that. I also want to just call it again. You should go visit the ngCC validation repository that Minko built. That has all those repositories. Feel free to add yourself. Feel free to look into the compatibility of your dependencies and really understand. And if you are a library author that's having trouble with IV, or you're seeing issues that you're not understanding, reach out to us. We want to help libraries, because what we've seen is that whenever we fix one issue with a library, or we help them understand what's going on or fix their packaging format, that can unblock a lot of different applications. So libraries are going to be very key to our strategy going forward. So we talked a little bit about our values at the beginning, but one of the things that I want everyone in this room to think about is, how can these not just be the Angular team's values, but where are there opportunities for us to all share those values? Because we feel like when we do this right, everyone here wins, but we want you to be doing this right and helping all of your communities and all of your organizations win as well. So when it comes to apps that users love to use, when it comes to building schematics, all those sorts of things, we think that not just your experience, but everyone that you collaborate with really, really does matter. And even on the community side of things, we've seen a lot of teams be very successful by creating organizations, by creating meetups local to companies. And so if you're not already attending a meetup or creating some sort of community or a Slack channel about these sorts of things, this is your opportunity. And that's how we're going to really work together to make everyone's applications better. We're also participating in whole new ecosystems. We see the rise of ng-add, ng-update, and builders as a really kind of astonishing amount of ways for people to build and empower others without actually contributing to Angular. When we think about contributing to Angular, a lot of people think, oh, I need to go into the Angular repo and send a PR. But you're actually contributing to Angular by doing any of these things for yourself, for your team. If you're interested in figuring out how to find some of these tools and maybe how to be discovered as a tool that's being published as part of the Angular ecosystem, Alana's giving a talk called Finding Angular. The thing to think about is using these same sort of tools to automate your team, right? Whether it's just blueprints to add the right sort of copyright that your team needs for all your files, to developing standards. Jochen talked about this idea of actually using code to enforce these conventions, using an injection token rather than trying to educate everyone about, hey, which mode is my application in and how do I choose for every single component? And we also see that there's always opportunities for integrations across applications. In the past, we've been big proponents of things like monorepository strategies and continuous integration across multiple teams. And we really think that this is a great time for everyone to adopt those sorts of strategies. Another thing that we've been doing on the Angular team is that we've been focusing a lot on the future for a long time. We've presented a bunch of conferences over the last few years saying, hey, this is stuff that's going to exist someday. And we've actually pulled that back a little bit for this AngularConnect. And so one of the things that you're going to note is that every talk given by someone from the Angular team is going to be something that you can go do today by opting into the Ivy preview, right? Just do that ng update command that I gave you, and all of the things, all the compiler capabilities, all of the features that Igor talked about, all of the benefits that come and all the thinking and hard work that we put into Ivy, you can try these things today, and now is a really good time. So to just kind of highlight some of those talks, Alex, right after this one, is talking all about the compiler. So how do we get from your template into these Ivy instructions that Igor was talking about, and what happens along all those different steps of the path? Manu is going to be talking a little bit about the processes that the team has. We haven't actually been as open as we would like in the past about how do we build software, how do we prioritize, what mistakes have we made along the way, and he's going to share some of our journey there. Mishko is going to be going deep into the technical thought that we put into and the challenges that we've solved while building Ivy about how do we make Angular fast. Joey is going to be getting into how do we manage a project at the scale of Angular across GitHub, right? We have multiple repositories, we've got a huge number of team members, we've got a huge ecosystem outside. How do we keep all of this in sync? Rado is going to be talking a little bit about constraints and how sometimes by constraining yourself, by using something like declarative templates, you can actually empower yourself and actually create a more maintainable and higher velocity application. And Kara is going to be ending things with a talk about how Angular works from the Angular team, really looking at, okay, now we've got this compiled instructions. What happens? What are the data structures? What are the models that are underlying all of that runtime to make it work as the application exists and as the user uses it? So really, we wanted to kind of shift things. And instead of just saying, hey, here's the future, we want to make everyone here feel part of the team. We want you to feel like you know not just what Angular is doing, but how it's working a little bit behind the scenes so that you feel more comfortable collaborating, contributing, and understanding and being a part of the Angular team. So thank you, everyone, and we're really excited for AngularConnect this year.